Learning Curves and Coffee, where we skip the perfection, spill the real, and talk parenting, teaching, and personal growth over a hot cup. I'm Ivory, a mother, edupreneur, and your caffeinated co-pilot through the meltdowns, meetings, and magical moments. Let's get into it. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are listening. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. So grateful. I always say that on the podcast, but the part of the reason why I say that is because when I sit down to record, I'm thinking about the last episode I did and the response and feedback that I've gotten in the interim in between each episode, and it just warms my heart because I feel like the podcast Learning Curves and Coffee and the consulting brand Embracing Neurodiversity is it's like the little engine that could. We are operating in our third year, November the 11th, I believe, or the 12th. I have to go back and see, because if it's November 11th, 2022, the numerology behind that is deep, but I'm going to go back and check. But anyway, I know it was November when I got the LLC for Embracing Neurodiversity, and then December I started the podcast. And so I feel like in many ways we've been like the little engine that could. Obviously, this is a podcast of one. It is a solo journey right now, and so I'm moving all of the pieces, but we are trucking along and making good impact because you all have responded so positively in comments and emails and in my direct messaging. And so thank you for your support and your time. So I want to jump right in per usual and address something that lingers over my entire messaging when it comes to embracing neurodiversity. And so I'm just going to say the loud part out loud. A lot of parents raising neurodiverse children are exhausted because somewhere along the way, we were taught that parenting meant fixing. Fix the behavior, fix the meltdown, fix the stimming, fix the speech delay, fix the social skills, fix the school struggles, fix the diagnosis. And before we know it, parenting starts to feel less like connection and more like project management with anxiety. But today, I want to offer another thought. What if your child is not a problem to solve? What if the real work isn't fixing your child, but understanding them? And honestly, understanding ourselves and truly, and to be honest, really the parenting journey is also about understanding ourselves. I remember when my son was first diagnosed as being autistic, and that information came quick, and then I hit the ground running. Therapies, strategies, interventions, milestones, IEPs, goals, more goals. Then somebody casually hits you with early intervention is key. And how much pressure does that give someone? Does that give a parent? Just the subtle suggestion that if you don't optimize your child immediately, society might implode. That is what that messaging implies. And I noticed something happen inside of me when I was receiving that message. I stopped seeing moments and I started measuring, right? I wasn't asking, is my child happy? I was asking, is he catching up? I wasn't noticing his joy. I was scanning his delays. And let me be honest, that mindset is exhausting. And I know I'm not the only one who did it. I know I'm not the only one who operated in that space. And in fact, I work with and alongside of parents who still continually operate in this space. Last week I spoke at a parent group and many of the questions were aligned to how do I either fix my child or fix a barrier that is keeping my child from integrating into normalcy, right? And so it had me thinking about a book I used to reference about a year or two ago when I first started the podcast, The Conscious Parent, and written by Dr. Shafali. And then it had me thinking about going back to that to be able to give parents a different perspective. And there's a line from the book that challenged me a while ago. And then it also affirmed what I started to do once I realized that measuring my son's progress was ineffective. And so Dr. Shafali talks about how parents are conditioned to believe our job is to fix our kids and how dangerous that becomes when children don't comply with our expectations. And because neurodiverse parents hear this messaging constantly, how to fix your kid, imagine how daunting and anxiety and quite frankly depressing that can be and become. If your child is melting down in a grocery store, the immediate inclination is to stop them or to fix them. If they are stimming in public or showing some sort of physical affect that is not socially acceptable, your first inclination is to stop it, to tell them to stop, right? If they don't socialize typically with their peers, your first inclination is to force them to do so and to train them, quote unquote, to do so. If they are struggling in school, your first inclination is to correct that, to challenge the school systems, which rightfully so. And we've had plenty of podcasts about what that looks like in a collaborative way. But we begin to operate in a defense mode when we see what we perceive as our child's deficits, right? And the pressure becomes, how do I make my child appear more acceptable in the world, right? That's the pressure that we live with. And that's an inefficient way to look at things, quite frankly. So here's what I've learned through my own discovery, acceptance, and embracing journey. My son was never the problem. The problem was the fear. The fear that he'd be rejected. The fear that people would misunderstand him. The fear that I'd fail him. The fear that the world wouldn't be kind. According to research published in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Delays, parents of autistic children experience significantly higher levels of chronic stress than many other parent groups. We know this to be true. I don't necessarily need to quote the data for you to know that this is your lived experience. It's often comparable to combat-related stress. I raised my hand first of feeling that, right? And honestly, much of it is imposed by society And much of it is self-imposed, right? Because neurodiverse parenting isn't just parenting. It's parenting while advocating, educating others, decoding systems, grieving expectations, managing sensory overload, and carrying emotional labor. And we know that that can be heavy. So, discovery is where we want to get honest. Not performative honesty, not Instagram honest, real honesty. Discovery asks the question, what am I actually afraid of? Am I afraid my child will struggle socially? Am I afraid of judgment? Am I grieving the parenting experience that I imagined and desired? Because sometimes our urgency to fix our kids is actually our attempt to soothe our own anxiety. And listen, acceptance is not giving up. I need parents to hear that clearly. Going back to the parent group I spoke at recently, and we talked about this idea of what acceptance and even embracing looks like, and how celebrating differences is important. And understandably, a lot of parents were like, I don't understand this concept of celebrating something that is difficult to navigate. And I hear you loud and clear. But acceptance does not mean don't support your child or have a standard for your child to reach based on you and your child's ability, right? It means I stop treating my child like a broken version of somebody else. So acceptance doesn't mean that you don't stop supporting your child to become the best versions of themselves. It means I stop treating my child like a broken version of somebody else. And that's different. Acceptance says, my child deserves support without shame. My child deserves growth without constant criticism. And my child deserves to feel safe being themselves. And then comes embracing. And embracing is powerful because this is where we stop parenting from fear and start parenting from connection. And that is why I lean into and call my company Embracing Neurodiversity, because I find that the idea of embracing to both be metaphorically powerful and literally to take something on and make it your own, to embrace it, right? So instead of how do I stop this behavior, we ask, what is this behavior communicating? What is it trying to teach me? Instead of how do I make my child appear normal, how do I help my child feel safe, regulated, and understood? Right? There's a difference there. So, per usual, I want to give you all some practical ways to move from fix it mode, right? Because we are not here to fix our children, and we're not here to fix anybody truly except for ourselves. And even that, you're not broken, so you don't need to be fixed. But if you are someone who appreciates evolution and growth, then this is how I have been able to navigate this journey of parenting my beautifully brilliant neurodiverse child. Number one, stop viewing every difference as a deficit. Different is not automatically dangerous. Some autistic children communicate differently, learn differently, play differently. That does not automatically mean something is wrong. Learn the difference between supports and control. I'm going to do a podcast episode about this to break it down a little bit more. But support says, I want to help you thrive. Control says, I need you to make me comfortable. Two very different things. And sometimes it's hard to know the distinction when you lack some self-awareness. And so we're going to talk about that in upcoming podcasts. Number 3, regulate yourself before correcting your child, right? Because this helps you be more proactive instead of reactive. Half the time we think we're correcting behavior, we are actually reacting to embarrassment or shame, especially when we are in public. I've had plenty of moments where Khalil, my son, is probably displaying unsavory behavior or behavior that is not socially acceptable, right? Not dangerous, not unsafe, just not socially acceptable. And I would sit there stoically, minding my business, letting him do what he feels most comfortable and safe doing. And I have had family and friends display a level of discomfort because they expected me to redirect his behavior or minimize something that was uncomfortable for maybe them. But again, I go back to, first of all, I need to keep myself regulated in this moment. And ask, is this dangerous? Is it unsafe? Is it harmful? Then if he wants to play with his utensils while we are eating dinner, then go right ahead, honey. Right? And that sounds trivial, but these are things that oftentimes you'll be surprised how much parents are like, stop, don't do that, because maybe it's not part of the decorum. So, regulate yourself before correcting your child. Number 4, let your child be fully human. Humanness is complex and layered and deserves to be experienced in its fullest capacity. Your child is allowed to and should be able to struggle, to be emotional, to get overwhelmed, to have accommodations, to dislike certain things, foods, social settings, to recover slowly. This is their journey. You are there as a perimeter to keep them safe and to guide them and to learn what their needs are. Being human is not failing, right? And number 5, redefine success. I say this to parents and families that I work with on a constant basis. Redefine success for yourself. Success is not, my child looks the most typical. Success is, my child feels safe, connected, confident, supported, and most importantly, loved without conditions. Oftentimes when I get a little worried about Khalil's future and where he is academically, right, I have to immediately back that thought up and remind myself, Khalil is happy and he's joyful. There's not a day that goes by that he's not laughing about something or he's not engaging in a special interest that brings him joy. No, don't get me wrong. He's incredibly human, so he has his emotions and he has his layered feelings, and thankfully meltdowns have minimized significantly over the past year. Thankfully, honey, because they used to wear me out. But there are moments when they could happen, and so every day is not a utopia, but every day he is happy. He finds a moment of happiness and laughter. And so I always, whenever I feel myself getting worried, remind myself immediately, Khalil was happy. Khalil was happy. And that to me, and he's safe. And that to me is my measure of success. And what's an indicator for happiness? His laughter, his smile, his hugs, his ability to say no when he doesn't want to do something and say it confidently, right? This is why I work with parents, because I realize that parents don't just need autism strategies, they need space to process their grief, to release the shame, and to rebuild confidence, and to regulate themselves and discover joy in parenting again. Because you can find joy in it truly. The discovery, acceptance, and embracing framework was born from that exact reality. Because when parents heal or embark on the healing journey and shift some of the ways that they think about their child and their parenting experience, and once they get support on this journey, their family dynamic changes. So I want to leave you with this thought. Your child does not need to earn love through performance. They do not need to mask their humanity to deserve connection. And you do not need to parent from fear to be a good parent. Some of the most beautiful moments in my parenting journey happened after I stopped trying to create the child I expected and started deeply seeing my child as they were. This does not have to be hard. So, per usual, thank you for joining me for another episode of Learning Curves and Coffee. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with another parent, educator, or caregiver who needs the reminder that our children are not problems to solve. They are people to understand. So, until next time, keep your coffee strong, or your tea, or your water, your expectations flexible, and your compassion louder than your fear. And till next time, most importantly, take care of yourself. Bye. This is Learning Curves and Coffee.